So let's begin by asking ourselves what really is electronic waste. We have typical ideas of what it might be, and the slide is not really about the definition. So it's not about how to put it in legislation, how to define it, but really to think it's everywhere. It can be IT equipment, it can be a refrigerator, it can be tools, it can be an electric guitar, a gym machine. It can be and is really everywhere. And new things keep coming on. So we have now smart watches, smart cars, smart washing machines. It just keeps coming. And some of these devices have value in them. Some of them contain gold, some of them contain copper, some of them contain poison, and some of them contain all of the above. So those that actually have value in them will have attention and will have people, formal, semi-formal groups working with them and trying to resell them, trying to work with them. But those that are only poison and cannot be resold will be discarded and will be forgotten in the best case in a drawer or in a landfill or might be lost. And they are, as Maya mentioned, very critical and they are polluting. They easily pollute. So it's a reason for concern. And what businesses can do for the valuable parts is to sell them, either locally in Lebanon for metals, for aluminum, for iron, certain types of plastics, but other materials need to be exported because it's not easy to reclaim the gold in them, the valuables in them. It needs sophisticated equipment, and most countries in the world don't have these huge smelters to reclaim it. But for this trade, there's a heavily regulated sector by the Basel Convention. So the Basel Convention is an international convention signed by most of the world. Only 3 countries didn't sign, and Lebanon did sign. And that means that some hazardous wastes can be shipped, but only to countries that are able to handle them with adequate infrastructure and under certain conditions. So with notifications and a set of bureaucratic steps. And the aim is to prevent illegal dumping and to regulate how this trade works. And the reason why some of the poisonous or some of the hazardous equipments are neglected is exactly because there is no value in them. They cannot be resold and money needs to be put in handling them. And the question would be who to do it. So in the paper, we challenged the idea that it should be the ministry. It is not the Ministry of Environment's fault or responsibility necessarily to give a solution to electronic wastes. So if we think about manufacturers, if we think about all those companies selling phones, computers, their business model is to put as many devices and as much equipment in the market as possible, and newer ones and faster ones and more beautiful ones, and sell, sell, sell. So why, if they are profiting from these sales, should governments with people's taxes be responsible for their end of life 100%? And that's what leads to the concept of EPR. It's the idea of the polluter pays principle. So shifting a little bit of the responsibility back to the producers, to those selling the equipment. So they pay a small fee or a small percentage of the price of the product is meant to finance collection, transport, and management of waste. Without it, there are many issues. Without EPR or without a similar legal framework, then there's a bit of a vacuum. It's not clear whose responsibility it is to deal the waste. And this leads to inefficiencies, this leads to a lack of funding. If no one's responsible, if everyone's responsible, then no one's really going to pay for it, especially for those, for lamps or for other materials that have no value. So another challenge is on informal networks and collection systems that may compete against formal ones and that may discard, burn, or mismanage equipment. So as Maya mentioned, very few a low percentage of the equipment is currently recycled or handled in a responsible manner in Lebanon. So in a nutshell, there are many reasons why handling e-waste is difficult. One is it's heterogeneous, as we saw before. It's all kinds of devices, and it's very hard for one company to give a solution to all these devices. It's not like organic waste where you can compare a pear and an apple. You cannot compare a refrigerator with a phone or with this pointer or with who knows. So trade is possible, but it needs regulation under the Basel Convention, which is a little bit burdensome on small companies. There is kind of an influx of low quality or damaged devices that are being imported into Lebanon. And it's hard to monitor them, it's hard to regulate this, but it leads to the fact that more electronic wastes are there, or that devices become waste faster. And yes, technology keeps advancing, so infrastructure and recyclers need to keep up with this, with insufficient funds on top. So the roadmap presented in the policy paper aims to give solutions in the short term to support companies and SMEs that are already helping solve the e-waste problem in Lebanon, so how to immediately help them survive. And the medium and long-term measures suggested are more leading into the direction of policy and more regulation. But the first step is to support businesses as they exist. So I'll go very quickly so that you may read the paper. The first one is related to a platform. It would be very useful to have a common space, to have a website, to have a common area for stakeholders to participate, to exchange information, to publish data, to publish results, to speak to each other. So it's not only recyclers, transporters, but it might be also CSOs, it might be the lead of a working group on electronic waste, for example. And this leads to point 2, related to partnerships with international companies. So in developing the paper, we interviewed some startups and companies working in refurbishment or handling of electronic waste. And they benefit a lot from exchanging with the buyers abroad. So the buyers might orient them with the Basel procedures, with the Basel notification, or they might help them have access to more sophisticated tools for testing equipment, and so on. Point 3 is related to incubation and acceleration, which is self-explaining but not negligible. And point 4 is related to licensing. So, of course, to operate a business, to be a recycler, you need a license, but it should not be as burdensome for small companies as it is for other production processes. So, for example, an environmental impact assessment is expensive. Usually, obtaining a license might take many months for a recycler. And if these companies are helping, are providing a solution, then their path should not be a headache, while keeping standards, of course. Point 5 is related to awareness raising, but point 5 is actually also point 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 100. So awareness raising and capacity building needs to happen all the time. And it's not only for consumers, it's not only for us and the common public, but also to help ministries out with more information, with common practices abroad, water standards abroad in practice, recyclers, transporters. It's really for everyone involved in the chain. And it doesn't stop at point 5, but it should be started as quickly as possible and be persistent over time. Point 6 is related to data. Of course, you cannot plan or invest without having data. No, none of us would do it, and neither would the government, neither would international partners. So it's important to know how much waste is generated, which types, and then we can prioritize. And where are they? And then we can budget for them. Assessing investment feasibility goes hand in hand with these. The next point is engaging bulk producers. And what is meant by this is not only thinking of customers as individuals and households, but it would be much easier to have a partnership with the airport. It would be much easier to have a partnership with malls, because then we have larger volumes supporting or as clients for SMEs and not 100 individual households. And it's also easier to raise awareness that way in the long term. Then developing standards and guidelines goes hand in hand with refurbishment. So there is a lot of refurbishment and repair going on in Lebanon, which is great. but there is an obstacle to have enough good original spare parts that arrive in time. So if a computer breaks and one has to wait 3 weeks for a battery or for a replacement, then it's not practical. And the business struggling to get enough spare parts would lose market. Drafting policies would be just a draft, not to scare anyone, just drafting policies, just putting ideas together and beginning to outline what could the law or the decision or the decree look like. Then we would go on facilitating Basel Convention declarations. It does not mean that it needs to be leaner or that standards need to be lower. It just means that responses need to be quicker for anyone on good faith trying to export legally, but also penalties should be there for anyone trying to be sneaky and getting past these regulations. Point 12 is reducing low quality imports, as we discussed before. Only highly performing or standardized performing products should enter the market in the first place. Then we have the ratification of a framework. This is actually the enactment of policy, but as you saw, it's already point 13 out of 15. So it's not necessary to do it in the beginning, and the implementation of regulations needs many parallel activities to be going on, need strong enterprises, need capacities built in the government, and need many of these points. So that's why it comes much later also, because there's no use in passing law and having a bill if there are no means to enforce it. And it doesn't need to be EPR, it just needs to be a system where it's not only the Ministry of Environment or it's not only the consumer paying for the management of the waste. Now, the second to last point is full coverage, and this refers to all of Lebanon, not only Ashrafiyya, not only the big cities, but also all areas. And this is logistically expensive and challenging, and that's why it does need regulations eventually. And also all waste types. So not only those which can lead to profits if they're managed or resold, really, including everything, including lamps, including all the different types. And finally, we have monitoring. So it's important to set targets of collection and see how much is really being collected, to see or to penalize as well whoever's free riding on the system. And these are all described in more detail. Now I went really quick and we'll jump in the discussion, but these are all described in detail in the policy paper. And just the point is to have some key takeaways. So to remember that electronic waste is very diverse and may contain hazardous components, to remember that that because of this reason, it might not be such a direct business without legislation, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be. The third point is related to the informal sector and to getting access to equipment. So even though there are large volumes of e-waste generated in Lebanon, to actually have them at the door of your facility, to actually have them still containing the components that have gold and silver might be a big challenge. So there is competition. And the final point is that there is still an interesting market for companies. So there are Lebanese startups and SMEs working in the field. There are many manufacturers who are proactively engaging in voluntary take-back schemes. There is a public that is aware. So it doesn't need to wait for legislation to be passed and enacted to start working. And that's what we'd like to discuss more today. So I'll hand over to Johanna again.
Thank you. And you can actually download the policy paper under this QR code. But I recommend that you start reading it when you get home rather than here in the session, because I think keep in mind what you just saw, what Aurora explained in terms of the main structure and points, and just enjoy the discussion in the meantime. And thank you, Aurora, for this great presentation. I'm very impressed how you know what's going on behind your head and just need to quickly check over your shoulder which slide you're on. That is very impressive. Okay, so I think we saw that we have many challenges and we also have some solutions. And we have here several people that are actually, working from many, many different perspectives on these issues and that are implementing these solutions on the ground. But I think let's take a step back and Samar, maybe I have a first question for you. Why do we actually care about ensuring that e-waste is recycled properly? Why is it important that we stress on these e-waste recycling and dismantling and being treated properly?
Yes, sure. Basically, in the first keynote, the first keynote speaker talked about the quantity of e-waste that is generated in Lebanon. Around 60,000 tons of waste generated on a yearly basis, whereby only 0.12% or something like that is going to formal recyclers. And the remaining, we don't know the fate of them. Probably some of them are going to landfills with the regular waste, others are going to open burning sites, etc. There are several environmental and health impacts from the improper management of electronic and electrical equipment, starting with sourcing the materials to produce these equipment. We have lots of pollution coming in terms of greenhouse gases that would affect climate change. We have lots of exposure to heavy metals, etc., whenever they're mining those heavy metals. And eventually, whenever they are manufacturing and producing those products, there are also lots of environmental impacts in terms of air emissions, etc. And whenever those products are to be discarded and to be managed as well, there are several, they contain lots of heavy metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium, etc. They contain phthalates, especially in the plastics, part of those electronic and electrical equipment. They contain brominated flame retardants that also have lots of toxicity and health impacts. Those materials, we get exposed to them either, for example, if we keep those equipment at home, and there's a fire or an incident, for example, we get exposed to volatile organic compounds, to dioxins that are persistent organic pollutants that persist in the environment and does not degrade and get accumulated in fat tissues in human beings. Those have, of course, a major health impact in terms of affecting the reproductive health systems, causing mutations, etc. Exposure to heavy metals like lead and mercury, for example, can affect the immune system, they can affect the central nervous system, etc. If these materials, for example, the equipment get damaged and they leak into the indoor environment or the outdoor environment, they can also affect people either through inhalation, through ingestion, or through dermal exposure. And when we send those materials to informal recyclers who deal with them either by open burning or by adding certain chemicals like acids to extract the gold or the silver or the copper or whatever. So also there will be exposure to fumes and heavy metals, which also affect the health of those workers. And they can leach, those contaminants can leach to the groundwater, the surface water, to the soil as well. And eventually they will get back to us in terms of water consumption, food consumption, and even inhalation of polluted air. Many people around informal recycling hubs can get exposed to heavy metals and toxic fumes. Particularly pregnant women and children are the most vulnerable to these exposure, and they might be exposed to, for example, children developmental problems, neurological problems. In women, we could see more stillbirth and premature birth, etc. So in addition to their effect, also the effect on biodiversity, for example, either air pollution, the leaching of toxic metals and persistent organic pollutants would affect also the biodiversity, the ecosystem, several ecosystems around the polluting sites. So there's a lot of environmental impacts, and we're talking also about valuable materials that are present inside these equipment. So it's very important, instead of mining and sourcing, extracting from nature additional materials to accommodate for the needs to produce additional equipment in the future, it's very important to recover those valuable materials and reuse them and keep them in the economy as much as possible to reduce the environmental impact of mining and extraction as well.
Thank you, Samar, for reflecting on these health and environmental concerns. Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, you know, this is really worrying, and I think we know the importance of raising awareness. Now that you know, please raise awareness around you and your environments about how important and how big these impacts can be. What can people do, André? You know, you work for Nadeera. It's one part of that waste chain. You know, where can people go if they want to donate or recycle those materials to be sure that it's not landing in the dump or in the landfill?
Yeah, so as Aurora first mentioned, the difficulty with these types of waste is that they're not homogeneous. So we say electronic waste, we mean a lot of things on this table are electronic, but they're not the same. Some things contain more valuable materials. Some things contain toxic heavy metals like lead, like the batteries that have lead in them, the new batteries with the solar and all of these things. And there are some things that are just mainly mechanical, like a washing machine, a hairdryer, a fan. These things that are maybe more easily refurbished than a phone, let's say. So let's explain first a bit about what we do as Nadeera and Yalla Return. So we developed Yalla Return as two things. It's the app, which is an engagement tool with individuals. We want people to have a place where they have an FAQ, a learning page for recycling, which is within the app. We want a place that can reward people, which is also within the app financially, and keep track of their environmental impact. So we want them to come to us with their recyclables, with their spring cleaning waste, including the waste, the fans and the things that they don't know what to do with. And we want to be the solution. We want to say, okay, we'll take care of it. We can take care of your plastics, we can take care of your cardboard, of your paper, as well as the fan, hopefully the phones, all of the laptops, all of these things. But they're not equal. These things aren't equal. What we do is basically, we're working with a lot of people. So because we take a lot of waste, PET is a type of plastic, goes to one person, HDPE, another type of plastic goes to another person. We are the intermediary, we're the mediator. We are the link between the individuals and the traders, recyclers, all of these people who know how to extract value out of these items. So with electronic waste, we are able to take some things, but not everything. We have to be selective because we have to see, can we effectively take care of this type of waste, or are we just telling them, yeah, we'll take them and then just put them in the bin next to the shop? That doesn't work.
So what is it that you're taking?
So we take the things that are easily refurbished. We do take so we're not getting really a lot of washing machines and refrigerators because people come like with a bag. They're not coming with their trucks. So it's mainly some of these things, but they do come sometimes with laptops, with phones, with fans, so things that they can carry. We have it, so depending on the condition of the item, it might be refurbishable. We have people who will buy the item for a decent price from us, and then they will refurbish it and sell it again, like a fan. A fan is easily serviceable, so they'll do that.
So you actually have the contacts with the people that can refurbish some of the things, and when you receive, you then direct the things that can be fixed, right?
So because we are the mediator, we cannot keep these things. We have to give them to someone who can properly take care of them. So we're limited with the things that we can take, obviously. We're trying to take as much phones and laptops as we can, and then giving them to people who can properly handle them, like Gaby. There are some things that are super toxic and heavy metals, like Samar mentioned, that we will contact someone who can export them using the Basel Convention. So we have to work with everyone because we want people to come. We want them to. We want to be the one-stop shop for the information about recycling, but also the actual recyclables themselves. So we are a collection point. We are also the engagement app. And the more we have collection points and the more we have connections to actual off-takers and clear guidelines, I mean, the policy is going to help a lot. Clear guidelines, these people are certified to take care of heavy metals. So, okay, you can take the lead batteries that people are installing and you can give it to them. Then we are confident we are able to say, okay, we'll take these batteries because we have someone who can buy them from us. So this is mainly how we're interacting with these types of waste.
Anyone here, let's raise some hands. Who's heard of Yalla Return before, or who knows that there is a point where they can, okay, this is about half of the room. Everyone else, take a moment, maybe download the application, check out what they already have as information, including on electronic waste. I'm putting you on the spot, André.
It's good publicity.
Yes, and there are other apps, of course, as well, by other companies that I think are aiming to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe talk a bit about this. So we're not alone. There are a lot of people who work within this sector. We have the drop-off locations. Some people are doing household or curbside collection. So there are a lot of people over a lot of geographical locations. Check with them, always check with them. Do you know how to take care of this? A lot of people will take electronic waste.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the waste crisis in Lebanon has actually initiated some solutions, which is great. So we've had these entrepreneurs that are offering these drop-off points popping up in the past couple of years. And so most of them, once they actually collected the electronic waste, they actually sent it to EcoServ, right? So let's hear a bit from Gaby. You know, what does EcoServ does with the e-waste, and you know, starting from when the e-waste arrives at your site and all the way to the end of the value chain, and tell us a little bit, you know, after sharing with us what you're doing, what also challenges you're facing along the way.
Of course. First. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, before starting discussing about what we do with electronic waste, I would like to talk a little bit about our mission. Basically, EcoServ has been built to contribute the maximum, or at least maximize contribution to circular economy. All throughout the world, electronic waste is one of the highest contributor to circular economy, except in Lebanon, because of so many other things. So our mission is basically to maximize the use of every single part that we take, and I am proud to say that 100% of what we collect is totally deviated from landfills and open dump sites. And that's on the one hand. If you want, the other advantage of this is to be able to create more green jobs, not necessarily in labor or technicians, as well as a white collar. In other words, people who can do the research, people who are able to be creative in creating new products from the electronic waste. Now, EcoServ, we have, first of all, three types of customers. The first is are the households, and because of that, we have 120 drop zones throughout Lebanon, from deep south to deep north. And very soon we are going to be having 30 additional ones. We have already contracted with IPT, with LIU, with quite a few other institutions that have that are also present in many sites or many regions. The reason why we went into these drop zone is because we wanted to be closer to the household. Most of the households are basically very attached to their electronic waste. On the one hand, sometimes these are bulky equipment. Some other times they don't know what to do with them, or is there a place close by where they can go and deposit them? And we have been trying to avail these. In parallel, we have done also north of 250 workshops all over the place, you know, from universities to municipalities to social clubs, you know, Rotary and all that, to be able to basically, you know, work on awareness, because most of the time awareness is really lacks a lot. And I promise to be nice today. I'm not gonna comment on anything. I'm just gonna say that there is a lot to be done in awareness, not only from the scrapper side, also from the solid waste company side, because it's very important when you are dealing with a product that contains hazardous material. And by the way, all the boards contain hazardous material. Some of them have precious metals, but all of them, without any exception, have hazardous material. So they are dangerous, whether they burn them or not. And the worst part is that now that the new boards are PCBs, printed circuit boards, which are boards that you cannot extract anything unless you have really high technology in that respect. Okay, going back to our second part, our second type of customers are the institutions. We actually have a great relationship with institutions. I mean, institutions, you don't really have to sell them because they understand what you're doing. They understand that you have to be sustainable, and we have much easier relationships with institutions, multinationals, rather than the SMEs, because SMEs also are looking for dollars and cents and to sell them to anybody just to you know, make a couple of bucks out of that. Our third customer base basically are the municipalities. Municipalities, we are using our ambassadorship program to basically shadow manage municipalities, not only in you know, the segregation of electronic waste, but also on solid waste, because we talk to them about all the solid waste, although it's not our specialization, but for them to understand that which waste are have an immediate impact on the environment, an immediate danger on the environment, and which ones that you know you can basically you know, trade with. Well, as soon as we receive these products from collection posts, we have our vans and trucks that collect from. We have divided Lebanon into five areas: north, south, Bekaa, Mount Lebanon, and Beirut. And we consecrate one day a week for each region, depending on how full the drop zones are. Once we receive the material, we do material separation. In other words, we take out the plastics from the metallic structure, from the boards, as well as, you know, the mechanical parts that are, you know, like the fans and all. The fans and the metallic parts are recycled in Lebanese factories. We resell them to the factories. We still have the plastic, which is about 40% of the electronic equipment. 40%, this plastic contains BFR, as Samar was saying, bromide fire retardant, and these are dioxins. In other words, if they are burnt, they are extremely dangerous. They they can impact the human immunity system. And what we have done actually with colleagues here from AUB, two professors that are working closely with us, we have succeeded in debrominating these plastics bringing them back to their virgin polymer state. So in other words, and using a green process. So the 3% waste that results from that can be thrown anywhere. It's non-toxic. So the bromide has been totally neutralized, and we get, the result is a virgin polymer that can be either sold as pellets to factories or produced. And we chose the latter. We are producing now. We have gone through a pilot, successful one, where we are producing 3D filaments for 3D printing. And the beauty of electronic waste plastics is that it's very rich. It has ABS, PC, HIPS. It has all kinds of combinations of plastics that you can use because, as you know, I mean, 3D printing has different usages, and for every use you have different mixture of plastics that come into play. Okay, well, once we finished with the plastics, we have the boards. This is our next, circular economy project, which is basically to treat the boards in Lebanon using a green process, because as you know, we don't have incinerators in Lebanon. If you use a toxic process, which is being practiced right now, it will impact more, and it will create more economic havoc than solve solutions. Going back to the competition, if you might say, we are the only NGO actually that is collecting and properly disposing of electronic waste in Lebanon. We are the only one. Our major competition are from scrappers who basically their favorite tool is the hammer. They take any equipment, they break it down. The plastic, which is unsellable because they don't have the technicity to be able to neutralize, to be able to sell it. So they throw it in ditches all over the place. The PCBs, most of the PCBs, they cannot do anything with them. They are dismantled and also thrown in ditches. All they do is sell the metallic structure and some of the parts that I was mentioning before. The problem with that is the fact that these guys average out their costs because they sell and buy everything. So it's like a department store. They average out their costs and are able to give good prices. And households, sometimes unaware households, if you want, are lured by this, and they have a tendency to bring to sell to scrappers. Now, the difference between what Maya was saying, the small amount of properly disposed of waste and the rest. First of all, 50%, according to a United Nations study in which we participated, 50% are still stored at home. And the storage at home is extremely dangerous because with the condensation that you have in the air and the humidity and all that, you have the lead, the mercury and cadmium. All of these, they have emissions. And these emissions are higher density than air. So they stick around at home. They are not like hydrogen or something. They stick around at home. In other words, and they are inodorous. So you are basically inhaling all types of toxins without really knowing what's happening. And this is extremely important. And this is the part of the awareness that we are trying to convey to households and the people who are stocking them in corners at the home and so on.
Maybe one follow-up question, just Gaby, because so as you mentioned, as an NGO, and these processes that you're explaining are really highly technical. So probably also very resource intensive. How do you see at the moment, like the donor interest and also the longevity of the support that you need to receive from the donors in order to continue the operations?
Unfortunately, so far donors have been focusing more on solid waste. Electronic waste has been
also necessary, but
no,
agree with you.
It's true. I mean, the only basically interest that we got was like 3 years ago from the Embassy of Japan. That's it. Based and focused on electronic waste because they feel like we do, that electronic waste, although in volume is less than other solid waste, it's more impactful and is way more dangerous than any other solid waste. And we are hoping that with conferences like these and what's going to come after that, more awareness is put on the role of electronic waste in environmental impact. Think of it in Lebanon, at least, as also trying to protect certain open dump fields, the open dumps that we are talking about. All of these are located in areas that are low-income areas, unfortunately. These are the ones who need more prevention, health prevention. They cannot afford. Our medical system now is basically elitist, and this is where most of the dump sites are located. Most of the burning of these materials are done, and this has a direct impact on health, and the prevention of this, especially in the economic catastrophe we are living in, is a must. It's a must for everybody who is working in the environmental field.
Absolutely. So before I jump into the next section of questions, Aurora, maybe you can give a brief overview of maybe examples that you know from other countries where maybe both the awareness but also the process along the whole value chain is working, and what are some of the limitations that we're seeing also?
Well, I'd like to start by pointing out that responsible waste management of electronics is not exclusive to rich countries. So it's not only possible in Japan and in Germany. We have many examples of regulations being drafted and implemented in India, in Colombia, in Rwanda, and many other drafts. So it's coming. And the frameworks then responsibilize also producers, so that it's a fair and transparent scheme to have enough of a budget and enough data and enough clarity on how to decide, how to prioritize. So this is one on legislation, but there are examples of countries that do not have legislation yet, but still gather and report data. So Tanzania, for example, has very good statistics and very good knowledge of their e-waste without having yet regulations. There are many voluntary schemes. So in South Africa, before legislation was enacted, there was something like a working group for e-waste of technical, legal, financial experts, CSOs, and they worked together for some time. And with help of donors, they eventually became the arm of EPR in South Africa. And they're still a nonprofit, and they're still working and implementing EPR. And it came from a voluntary basis before legislation. Good examples for awareness also exist in Brazil, where producers of electronics had a repair network. They shared spare parts, so Brazil is big, it had its logistical challenges, but still, no matter who the brand was who put the product in the market, they would accept to take it back from the consumer, because they were aware that consumers, as motivated and as engaged as they are, they're not going to drive around with their refrigerators hours and hours, or they're not going to carry and try here, and if it doesn't work, I'll try again next week. So they realized they needed to be practical, and they collaborated in this way. There's also a very good initiative in the South African development community and East African communities that developed performance standards. So they're MEPs. And the idea is to not burden the governments and customs on what they should check for, and you should study this in depth. But this is a suggestion to the minimum performance that solar panels must have, for example. So so they're able to detect which imports should be banned, which imports should be sent back, and which not. So it also helps the consumers see a certain performance, like a label, to see which products are better than others and which will last longer than others. And these are public, and it's an effort that was done once, and it involves 22, or it can be implemented in 22 countries immediately. There's also the EACO, which is the East African Communications Organization, and it has a strategy for electronic waste. So the idea is, because policy development is, very challenging and it's a very long process, why not propose a standard harmonized way for countries to cascade down policy? So not everybody has to go and make the same effort everywhere. So there are 4 countries participating right now. There are targets, there are conferences there. So it's a lengthy process, but it's ongoing. And when it's over, then these countries will have at least a draft that can be enacted and that has been discussed with different groups. So there's knowledge sharing, there's a roadmap, there's a common target. And finally, a very important aspect of this EACO strategy is thinking about infrastructure. So there's the hammer and there is refurbishment, but there is a limit to how much you can really process, to how much you can really recycle. So recycling would mean we would need to have factories here producing computers. So actually the metal is recycled in another process, it's repurposed in another process. And this is for metals, but for plastics, even if there are solutions in the lab scale that hopefully can be scaled up on an industrial level, there are certain limits. Dark plastics are very hard to recycle. And as soon as you have one little percentage of a disturbing plastic in a big batch, the whole batch is unusable and it cannot be used. So people who are willing to buy materials from waste, plastic or metals, will have standards. They will need to have a certain particle size, a certain mechanical strength, a certain purity in the metals. So the solution or the idea that the EACO proposes is we do not all need, not each country needs to invest a lot of money in sophisticated equipment, because we don't even have enough volumes right now. We can't even get our hands on enough volumes right now. So in the meantime, why don't we reach the maximum possible efficiencies manually or with small equipment, shredders, separators, and in the meantime export the rest, but with the idea that we will save a fund that will be invested in the most critical equipment. For, I think they prioritized refrigerators and cooling equipment in general. So this is something that can be done to prioritize infrastructure and dismantling as much as possible by hand and as much as possible locally, accepting that in the time being, some parts need to be exported to be better taken advantage of, and have then the idea of more trade, legal trade, in the region. So even if Lebanon does not need a smelter of its own, it can and should invest in refurbishment, in testing equipment, in shredders, in separators, in the long term, and then focus on those and gain values and gain networks and businesses and outlets for those.
Great, thank you. And so I think we've seen a little bit of an overview of what can be done once we decide to throw away the e-waste. But I think there's also a very important thought of, you know, how can we start even earlier in the process? Basically, how can we think about circular approaches? How can we work with producers to actually develop materials so that it would be less hard to extract things, etc. So let's have a round of reflection on some of that, and then maybe related to that on EPR as well. So the producer responsibility. Maybe keep your answers a little bit shorter in that second round. We have around 10 minutes left, so 2 minutes each for a response, and then we'll open up to the audience, okay? And we can start with Samar, because she's an expert on circular approaches as well, that I think can be adopted much earlier in the value chain.
Yes, so basically, whenever we're talking about circular economy, we're talking about the first principle is to try to design out waste. So whenever the producer of the electronic and electrical equipment are designing their products, they should start thinking about designing a durable product, not using hazardous materials in their production, developing the product in a modular way so that they can retrieve the different parts. It's easy to dismantle, it's easy to reuse, to recycle, to repair, etc. So at the design stage, there are very important steps that can be taken by the producer to enhance the value chain and make sure that the product can be repaired, reused, retrieved, etc. Moreover, there are changes in the business models that can be adapted nowadays in order to ensure circularity. The second principle of circular economy is to keep the material as much as possible in the economy and not to dispose it off. So basically, several business models can be used nowadays. Instead of selling the equipment itself, there are models of renting the equipment and getting a fee, a service fee, for example, for its use, keeping the phones, for example, as is, upgrading the software instead of changing the whole equipment itself. So there are
some best practice examples from abroad. There's the Fairphone, which some of you may know, which is actually a phone where you can exchange only separate parts very easily by yourself. But these haven't really penetrated the Lebanese market, except for a few people that are buying them from abroad. Exactly. Yes,
yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, there has been, with a linear way of thinking, there has been this planned obsolescence of products. So, you know, whenever you're buying a TV, it's like 5 years, after 5 years, you will be you'll have to dispose it off. So nowadays you can see legislation claiming for the right to repair and asking the producer to ensure that they have spare parts for as much as possible to keep this product as long as possible in the economy. It's very important to stress on the fact that even if we start designing out waste and you know, adopting these models, if we don't ensure a complete system whereby this product, even if it's modular, it's repairable, etc., if there's no infrastructure and no way that this product can go back to the producer, we will lose it at the end of the day. So thinking as a system and ensuring all the loops are closed, working in partnerships between the producer, the salesperson, the consumer, etc., is very important. Next is to ensure that the users are keeping the product in good maintenance, in good use, using it efficiently, and at the end of the day, return it back to the producer or the salesperson or whatever. To ensure that there can be different schemes that can be used. For example, returning the product for a discount on replacing it or for a certain fee, etc. Having centralized and decentralized locations in different areas so that the people can return back these products and eventually the producers will get them from there. Ensuring those reverse logistics are present, available, and can accommodate all the value chain. For the recovery, dismantling, etc., we need to have innovative solutions, having more technologies that would ensure a better efficiency in recovering the products with less pollution and less occupational hazards, etc.
Great, thank you. And also, I think last time we were discussing, there was a panel on the 16th during the EcoSwitch Festival where we had a colleague from Green Essence. It's a business that works a lot in the solar, but also in the let's say AC and other businesses, and they actually used one of the projects that they were in, donor-funded projects, to ensure that there is a take-back scheme. So to have an agreement with their suppliers from abroad to have this take-back scheme. And I think if you're buying electrical appliances from some of the retailers here, from retailers of international companies, because international companies abroad definitely have take-back schemes, but request it as consumers. We have a certain power as consumers to ask for this and say, why isn't this there? Why can't I bring back that product for it to be taken back? So we can request a little bit of that, but really good points to kind of think of, bring that producer into the responsibility. And maybe Aurora, you can reflect a little bit on that, because actually most of the electronic products that we buy and use in Lebanon are not produced here, right? So how can we influence these products that are coming in from abroad, and what happens with them in Lebanon? What can we do?
I would still emphasize a lot on performance standards and controlling what is coming to Lebanon at all, and also promote the understanding from retailers, online distributors, because online shopping counts as well. So even if they're invisible out there, they should still be aware of this, that there are refurbishment possibilities. So in one of the interviews we conducted for the paper, a founder of In Charge mentioned, well, I was motivated because I wanted to repair my battery and my supplier told me it's impossible. So he knew it is possible, and then that one thing led to another. But just the awareness and the willingness for refurbishment is one. The standards controlling what's coming in, whether it's repairable or not, is one. In Nigeria, there is an initiative to give something like a visa or like a permit for equipment that contains CFCs. Chlorofluorocarbons that are governed by the Stockholm Convention and that have a more intense greenhouse warming effect than CO2, sometimes 100 times or something like really important factors, really more impactful pollution. And the Nigerian government now demands to have a registry. So if these products are going to come into Nigeria, then there needs to be a registration. There needs to be something like a visa for them, and then they can easily monitor them. So these producers will later on need to declare, well, what happened? How many did you recover? If you put 20 in the market, then you have to recover at least a certain percentage of those 20s. So that's a way to monitor those materials that are very, very critical. And then so what can be done in Lebanon, the second part of the question. There is already, and this is great news, there is already a very big culture in refurbishment, in reuse, in selling, repairing, even donating, which is great. So having platforms with visibility, reaching out to people so they know it's convenient and easy to do it, and also improving or ensuring that data protection happens. Because while refurbishing a laptop or a phone may be possible, then we would all be worried, right? But there's my banking app, there's a lot of information in there. So giving them sort of the certainty and the accreditation, like, okay, they're responsible, they'll handle it well. There's hazardous components, but they have a certain license or a certain permit that they can handle this well. I think this would change a lot.
Maybe just a brief thought. So the aspects you were talking about in the sense of trying to do a little bit of quality control, it's actually something that's happening. And one of the reasons we started thinking about writing this waste paper was because we know that there is a lot more solar panels being imported, along with that solar batteries. And we know that there isn't, the capacity to deal with them in the future. So that was one of the reasons. And when we spoke with the several colleagues that are in the field of importing solar panels, and we spoke with ICU, and they're doing a project with LCC, and there it's already happening, right? They are trying to try to see how can we check the quality of the solar panels, of the solar batteries that are entering. How can we make sure that the ones then implementing it, the companies are doing a high standard? How can we make sure there isn't too much fake products and fraud, because with the solar panels, we know that there's a lot of panels that people have been claiming are the good quality, but actually they're really cheap quality. So I think that that's something similar for the e-waste sector would be really really good. Gaby, how would EPR influence your work? How is it relevant to your work?
First of all, let me be practical. We don't have enough volume in Lebanon to influence any producer. Let's just. This is really something that we shoot at, but it's never going to happen. So we have to rely on some kind of EPR. This is leading to your question actually. That EPR as well, enforceability is a big challenge in Lebanon because we don't have any enforceability to talk about. So it's up to the private sector, and we have already proposed a way to basically encourage companies to practice EPR. In other words, our proposal was to let the Ministry of Environment or Industry or whatever publish some kind of a list saying that these companies are so far, I mean, the legislation is not signed yet, but these companies, because we know from experience, actually we have 6-7 companies, multinationals, that work with us on EPR basis. I can name Philips, for example, I can name Schneider. These guys, they send us and they understand that there is a sustainable cost that we have to incur to be able to properly dispose and recycle such equipment. So by issuing some kind of a list like that as a halfway solution until we get the legislation, in about 100 years' time, we will be able to at least as a marketing tool encourage people to maybe practice this thing and impress on their regional offices, because most of the time all of these that I mentioned right now, I signed the MOU and the contract with the regional office. I did not sign with the Lebanese representative. And this is how we will be able to impress maybe on all the multinationals to start thinking about this, because we feel that, for example, we're talking about laptops and all kinds of equipment that everybody is refurbishing and all that. But there is something like a nickel cadmium battery and lithium ion battery, the smaller ones. These are not sellable and they are not rechargeable over here, and they are not reclaimable over here. So when somebody wants to talk about processing and all that, all of these are thrown in forests, and they leach. The lithium leaches poison in the ground, as well as they create a spark, and they are high causes of fires in forests. So you mentioned the ICU refit project. We actually have this facility at our factory now. We have the only insulated storage facility for batteries. We basically work, or at least recycle the lead acid batteries in Lebanon. However, lithium ion and nickel cadmium batteries, we have a promise from the ICU, financed by the EU, to basically ship them out to Europe. And this is an advantage for us because now we can collect the smaller ones. Instead of them being thrown all over the place, we can collect them and ship them along with the other lithium ion batteries. This is a big problem for Lebanon right now, because we don't have the volume to have a factory to do that. We were in talks with Jan of Waves to try to extend the life of the battery. That's the maximum we can do. I mean, once the battery is dead, it's dead. So we're going to have to find a way to basically get rid of it in a proper fashion.
Great, thank you. André, any last reflections, or is it okay if I open up? We had some more questions prepared, but I think it's good if we can tackle them later, but go ahead.
I think everything was mentioned here. Maybe if you talked about the Fairphone, if consumers are interested, there's like the framework laptop. You can go on iFixit, you can check all of your devices, how fixable they are before buying them. Apple is so any third party like technician. Yeah, so in the US, the right of repair, there was a lot of pressure from third party repairmen to actually
The mic a bit
have
closer. Just
to actually have the big companies like Apple send them the actual equipment that they might need to fix and the proper parts. So Apple, before this was implemented, they said, okay, we're gonna do it right now because we see it coming. So this was the success. But if you're a consumer, I mean, we're a small country, like Gaby said. But if you're a consumer and you're interested in how repairable or how durable your phones are or your laptops, check iFixit. There's that. And as Nadeera, as Yalla Return, I mean, the more solutions we have, the more innovation we have, the more we are able to tell people, okay, now we can take this. So it's always better to keep the conversation going, especially with people like Gaby who are innovating, to be able to tell people we are a one-stop shop for your equipment. So that's that.
great, thank you. So I think we're ready to have a quick look at the results. Did anyone that wanted to respond not manage to respond earlier to the survey? Okay, you can still do it. You can still add your response to it. Yes, others can just join, I guess. So, okay, we had a lot of people buying, wait, slide back. Yes, I think it has a timer maybe on it. Just stop it there. So we can see a lot of people bought laptop, phone, chargers, lots of chargers, of course. Hair dryers, interesting. I think there's lots more hair dryers on the market for the curly ones and the non-curly ones. Exactly. Hair straighteners, air fryers. Okay, this is a new food aspect. Very interesting. Batteries, of course. Okay, and let's move to the next slide. So, okay, a lot of people in the room are already quite aware because you gave them to a recycling point for free and generous. Wonderful. But I think the response now that are flowing in is true, and I will be honest, I'm definitely guilty of that as well. I definitely have some electronic equipment in the drawer that I was thinking, oh, I will bring it to recycling sooner or later. But you know, we think about the same things as family or friends living in Europe. You think, okay, when am I going to go extra? No, I'm going to go if I know that it's at the supermarket that I'm buying from anyways, right? So yes. Some people gave it to a recycling point against the reward, which is, you know, the incentive for people, especially I would say maybe the lower income people. And some people had them repaired by a local repair shop, and then very few. Hopefully, after this session, you will not just throw them away anymore. Okay, great. So, yeah, who sent them back to a producer? Maya. Of course.
You're the one?
Yeah, you're the one. Yeah, wonderful. So with that, let's open the question to the audience and let's hear a little bit from you. And I know that some of you are working and are knowledgeable about the sector, so you can ask questions or you can just give comments as well, ask questions to the panelists or throw in a thought. Yes, here is one, and then the lady in blue in the back. Second.
Thank you. So I'm Ahmad, the founder of InCharge.
Hi, Ahmad. Yeah, sorry, I
Gaby,
didn't recognize you.
Yeah, Gaby said they are using hammers. We actually saw them using bulldozers to remove lead acid batteries and crush them. And that was horrible, taking all the contaminated lead acid flowing to the sewers. Yeah, so we started InCharge, and so far we have refurbished more than 1,000 batteries. We extended their life by minimum 1 year. And now we're working on a project to use all the components from dead batteries to make a modular battery that we are manufacturing ourselves. This modular battery will be maintainable. So theoretically, it will live more than 10 years, made of different components. Whenever it dies, we just replace that component, and we're going to make it a subscription-based model, so you don't have to buy any batteries. We will still be the owners of these batteries. Lead-acid batteries for solar panels.
Yeah, it's one example of innovation that's very needed.
I would be very interested to have this conversation with you because we have already quite a good stock provided to us by lots of companies and all that through the ICU. Yes, it'll be a great thing. And actually, Jan will be interested as well to get in on the conversation because he is looking to extend the life of his batteries as well. So it could be a good opportunity.
Lithium, yeah.
So I feel a small coalition already building. Ahmad, you are part of a program still with Beirut or no?
Yeah, we initiated this startup with Clean Energy program.
Nice. And I just heard yesterday that Beirut is also initiating or continuing the waste consortium. So maybe we can talk to them to have a specific working group focusing on e-waste with the three of you, or maybe four. But there was a question in the back from a lady. So if we can go first, then here to the gentleman in front, and then on the left. Just ladies first.
Hi, thank you. That was very informative. My question is, do you think that as part of EPR, is product labeling helpful in your work in specific? Do you think that if producers label their products with what is present there and how hazardous they are or how to get rid of it, like guidance, does it help people on a personal level, like consumers, and you as entrepreneurs in the field?
And can you just mention your name and affiliation?
Oh, it's Angie Nasser. I'm an environmental health student at AUB.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So EPR fees or producers pay in accordance to the type of materials in the product, on how many or how different they are, on how easy it is to disassemble them. And if there are hazardous components, then the fee is more expensive. So this is a direct incentive to, or disincentive rather. If you pollute more, if you use more, you pay more. So this is helping the design your future waste model in circularity. For the recycler, at least in Europe right now, it is mandatory for manufacturers of equipment to give instructions and information on demand, on request to recyclers. So if a phone or if a device that was produced 10 years ago that nobody recognizes can be still used and without exposing, because sometimes there might be mercury in old monitors, for example. So if somebody is not familiar with them, they might be exposed. So that's the reason behind them. For consumers, I don't know if anyone wishes to comment. I guess only aware consumers would factor in it very heavily. But in the end, if you really need a lamp, if you really need a computer or a phone, you might look at the price and performance earlier, but.
I mean, I think from the consumer side, maybe like, if you remember, like old monitors, they used to have the Energy Star certified. So this was like it's a standard that monitors use to say this doesn't take a lot of energy to power. I mean, we can use the same thing, but it has to be visible. So if they write it in the fine print, they're not. I mean, they write it in the fine print. You can tell on the battery that it's made of lithium ion or whatever. But I think like a big third-party certifier that says, okay, this product is certified gold for repairability. Like the iFixit thing I mentioned. I don't think they're required to put this on the label right now of like the products, but that might help. That might help in the decision-making of consumers.
Great. We have the question from the gentleman in the front here. Yes.
The gentleman is Salim Adib. He's a public health professor at the AUB. I'd like to take back the issue of closing the loop on the circular process for e-waste. I'm going to talk as an average citizen. Never have we ever had so much money sitting at home. because we don't want to give it to the banks. Okay, but we're waiting for a business project that makes sense to our desire to be positive actors in the survival of this country. Now, if there is an equipment or equipment that is expensive but has prospects for a business, it can be built, it can be transformed into some sort of mass funding, and it can work. But we need to have you as experts in the field tell us, look, it takes $1 million and it will require so much tons of waste. But remember that we're sitting here in Lebanon. It's a small place, but we have a hinterland that is full of garbage that is waiting to be used. And in as much as we have to send our precious material to the neighboring countries, I think they wouldn't mind sending back their garbage to transform them into gold, literally. So where are those instruments or financial instruments in which we would like to put our $1,000 that's remaining in at home?
I can talk about currently we have three major projects that will transform and divert all types of hazardous waste from the landfills. Why? Because first of all, solid waste companies that are contracted by the government, you know, Ramco and City Blue, these guys are not mandated to handle any special waste. So everything is crushed in the bin. And you throw your desktop in the bin, it's crushed with organic waste. And being crushed with organic waste, as you know, it becomes poison. So it starts leaching in the truck itself. Basically, this is why we are trying to focus on awareness, because awareness is, we are telling people this is not the right way to store, this is not the right way to get rid of, and this is not the right way to basically guarantee some sort of a safe public health and environment for future generations. The first product was the debromination of plastics, which will render it basically non-toxic and producible. The second one is basically we are starting with the same team working on a green process for the boards, electronic boards. By the way, electronic boards, if we want to talk about precious metals, just to give you a perspective here, every ton of electronic boards, which results from around 12 tons of gross electronic waste, because like a huge printer, Xerox printer has two boards. Every ton has between 150 to maximum 200 grams of gold. So you can imagine how much you need to collect in Lebanon to be able to come up with this type of. However, it will become feasible once you establish such an operation in Lebanon and be able to extract not only gold, copper, lead, everything else. Exactly, and we are working on in that respect. And the third part is the battery, lithium-ion batteries. For example, most of the Arab countries, neighboring countries, are sending their batteries to Europe to be refurbished, and they pay money for that. I think it will be much easier and less expensive for them to send them over to Lebanon to be treated. So if we are able to come up with a good feasibility and have a factory for lithium-ion and nickel-cadmium batteries and rechargeable batteries in Lebanon, it's ideal. It attracts investors. It attracts foreign currency, as well as we would have a center that is badly needed, and we have the talent. When we talk about green labor and green, we have the talent. We have, as you know very well, we don't lack specializations here, and this is ideal ecosystem for that?
I will take the question in a second. I just want to say, if you have to leave, please pass through that door and grab some food because we have a delicious catering just after. We definitely don't want to create any food waste, but we do have a few more time for 2 or 3 more questions. And I just want to appreciate also the call for investors. I mean, we work very much with entrepreneurs, investors, and I think, yes, there's definitely lots of solutions, whether it's Ahmad or Jan or other entrepreneurs that are doing great work. And I know personally of investors that have invested their few thousands lying around at home that managed to turn it into a profit and have social impact. So I think it's a very valid point. Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Elias Kilmer. I'm a renewable energy specialist at Oxfam GB, Oxfam in Lebanon. So mainly recently we implemented several solar energy or solar water pumping stations in especially in the Bekaa, North Bekaa region. And recently, since last year and this year, we are rehabilitating existing solar water pumping stations. I can say, for example, I rehabilitated a station in Kabylias, which has a 200 watt panels, which is obsolete and it's still working. But however, if they have the fund, the mayor and the municipality, they want to change it to new panels. Same case, we have, and this is less than 10 years old, we have 2018, more than 12 stations in the North Bekaa and Baalbek region that have also PV panels with 300 watt. We are talking about every station we have, let's say 250, more than 500 panels. And most of these panels are even hit by bullets or for any reason they are damaged. So since you mentioned the renewable energy and the solar energy, is there a policy? And you said ICU and the LCC, are you working with them on a new policy or a new solution for these wastes? Thank you.
Thank you. Basically, listen, for the batteries, we are working on, for the panels, we recycle the panel. We basically dismantle the panels at EcoServ. We also store the lithium-ion, like I said, batteries and work on the lead acid. The problem of the batteries in Lebanon, and I think Ahmed can tell you that, it's the business model. Because the EU is within their policy is that we have to tell the customer he will have to pay for us to go and collect his battery. Whereas in Lebanon, everybody is selling his battery. And people are going door to door buying batteries. So this business model has to be reworked somehow. It might start with a subsidy, subsidy to be able to collect the first batch. And maybe from this first batch, get this working capital that we can use it for refurbishing or extending lives.
So what I mentioned regarding LCEC and ICU is that the LCEC has been trying to work on a kind of quality best practice / a list of both importers and companies installing solar systems, right? To ensure that both the quality and the installation are more long lasting. So yeah, Ahmad, go ahead.
I just wanted to share a highlight about lead acid batteries. We always hear it's toxic and it's not so efficient, especially compared to lithium. However, it has one major competitive advantage is that it's 99.9% recyclable. So almost 100% of the lead can be recycled into new batteries. And even the acid can be also filtered and refurbished to be used again in new batteries. And that's the main competitive advantage that got our interest in lead acid batteries.
It's cumbersome. You have to keep adding water and acid all over the place. I think it will die out. Which brings us to the issue of lithium. If the economic war continues, and China, we will need every molecule of, I can say, that's the future.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the audience left? Otherwise, I think we can. Okay, one more question.
Hey,
Yes.
I'm Stephanie. I'm a product designer. Thank you for this amazing gathering, putting together all the people. So I just had a thought when Aurora, when you were talking about the exportation, and are you considering with the kind of statistic or study that you made, considering the gas emission of transportation that's important in the cycle? So what is the weight? And thank you, Professor, for the other approach. It's thank you.
Did you get the question? Yeah, go ahead then.
Well, actually, it's very small comparably. Mining rare earth metals, mining and transporting all these metals, often from Africa, to production sites in China, where the manufacturers of equipment are, is way worse than shipping to usually Belgium the batteries at their end of life. And when you think of freight transportation, so these cargoes of ships have, the bigger ones have space for thousands of containers. So if there is one or two with lithium-ion batteries, it's usually not an environmental burden. An issue is for the batteries that at the moment, and especially after COVID, where trade routes changed a lot and became more expensive, and renting containers became more expensive, hardly any freight transporter wants lithium-ion batteries in their ship. They have a potential for fire, so they tend to avoid it unless it's larger volumes or unless it's a trusted partner. So that's maybe that's the biggest challenge of export, and that it's a rare material that in the end, and especially because Europe and the US are now trying to source back as many of the batteries as possible and putting it in their legislation, it's a good idea to try to keep the materials where they are, because after all, they were paid for. So it was not, they were not bought for a cheap price.
Right. Thank you. That was a great question, great answer. Thank you very much. Big applause for the panelists. And let's all grab a bite together. Thanks. Thank you. And thank you for AUB-NCC for hosting and co-organizing.